Suddenly, like daffodils in early spring, sprouting everywhere is a newfound wisdom that smart motorways are actually a terribly dumb idea. And yet, going back to 2006, therefore, Labour and Conservative governments and transport secretaries, many of whom were very big names back in the day, people with a glittering career either behind them or in front of them, thought they were very clever indeed. Smart motorways mean doing away with the hard shoulder, so that if you break down or are in an accident, there's nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. Anyone, you would have thought, would have seen the danger of that, but not our governments, which gave the go-ahead and spent billions of pounds on these smart motorways. Dozens of people have been killed since the introduction of these smart motorways, and one of those was Jason Mercer. He was killed by a truck near Sheffield. He had a little bump with another driver, both of whom got out on what once would have been the hard shoulder. Both of them were killed by a truck driver not making due care and attention. Jason Mercer's wife, Claire, has been campaigning ever since for the abolition of smart motorways, and I'm glad to say she joins us now. Claire, it was, I can assure you, regarded as the best idea since sliced bread back in the day. You could increase the capacity of motorways with no need for planning consents, no need for building works. Just wave a wand, hey presto, that hard shoulder is now a lane. It's hard now that all these people have died, including your late husband, and so many have been injured, so much tragedy. Tell us what happened on that fateful day, first of all, to your husband and Alexandru Morganu.
They had a minor bump, I believe, in the second and third lane. They just passed a sign saying no hard shoulder for 4 miles. They couldn't see an emergency refuge area. The sign that pointed to the next refuge area has just been ruled inadequate, and the sign has therefore been replaced because it literally just showed a telephone. And seeing as me and my husband never discussed a smart motorway, I'd never even heard the term before, I'm only assuming that he didn't know what to do. So they stopped where they could. It's your legal obligation to stop after an accident. And so they pulled over as far as they could into what should have been the hard shoulder, and even further over than that. But there was a barrier that stopped them getting right out of the lane. And then the other side of the barrier was a 30-odd foot drop onto a slip road and access path below. So they couldn't even securely get over the barrier. They exchanged details and took photos. And then within a matter of minutes, unfortunately, a lorry hit them and killed them instantly.
And this tragedy, disaster really, for your family, got you thinking, as many people are now thinking, that someone needs to stand up against. This is madness. This is not smart. This is insanity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you need to do, like the way you explained it, in theory, on paper, it sounds absolutely fantastic, but a lot of things do. And then when you start to do, the feasibility studies and the risk assessments, you need to do a risk assessment to take a walk these days. So how did these smart motorways go from an idea through all the various stages that are legally required to actually existing? Because it is madness. Who signed this off? The hard shoulder was so essential for 50 years. It was protected by law. You couldn't use it unless you absolutely had to. And obviously, very important manner of access for emergency vehicles. Because the other problem with these smart motorways is they're killing people and then stopping the emergency vehicles getting to them. They had to try and land the helicopter to get to my husband and Alexandru, but unfortunately they were dead before they could even land the helicopter. So it's not just dangerous, it stops, a potential solution to the danger they've created getting to the scene.
Well, you say who signed this off. I won't bore you with the list of names, but
Yeah, I know most of them. I know most
they
of them.
include some of the biggest names at the time in British politics. Nobody listened to the views of the emergency services, who, as you say, are also gravely disadvantaged by this change. How do you feel now that suddenly everyone agrees with you?
I'm trying not to get frustrated because it's not the point. You know, who started this and who shouted loudest is not the point. But it does annoy me because people have been saying for years and years, we've been saying this for years and years, but if you've been saying something for years and years and it's not getting any attention, do something different. My family and I got this far in 18 months. I had to Google how you start a judicial review. And even then, I just had to put posts on Facebook because it didn't make sense. And eventually, bit by bit, I got to the right people. So if I can do that when I'd never even heard of a smart motorway and I'm a steel buyer from Sheffield, not any part of law or design or anything, then other people, much, much better placed people, could have done this a long time ago. And I've been saying this since 2006. Well, every bereaved family I have met wasn't bereaved in 2006. So it could have saved all them people if they'd just spoken up when they did. And they were far better placed than me. So why didn't they? If I can get this far, why didn't they?
So what stage are you at now?
Well, we've got the judicial review. The judicial review's been going on they've been working on it in the background for a year now. And that's what I've got a meeting about this week. Got a meeting about that this week to discuss with council where we're at. But we're getting back on track. There's been an expert's report compiled. I've been sent a 150-page document that I am still dragging my way through. But it's really starting to get somewhere now. And then the verdict from the inquest last week was a bolt out of the blue. We really did not expect much from the inquest, but what we got was fantastic.
Tell us what you got.
What was a real surprise was a verdict of unlawful death on both Jason and Alexandro. We really didn't expect that because it would have been very easier for the coroner, because a lot of other people have to take an easier route, because these are basically everyone's bosses. The government is a government department, so it's everyone's bosses. So we just basically thought that we would just get the interest the only thing we'd benefit from the inquest would be the immediate interest. But we got a ruling of unlawful death and that Highways England were partly to blame, which is a massive thing because now they've ruled that Jason and Alexandra were unlawfully killed, and part of that was Highways England. I can't see how South Yorkshire Police can continue to reject my insistence that they investigate Highways England for corporate manslaughter. They are saying Przemysław Zuber was partly to blame and Highways England were partly to blame. Well, we've jailed Przemysław. Why are we not even looking at Highways England?
Well, we asked Highways England for a statement in reply. They said we extend our deepest sympathies to the families of Alexandru Morganu and Jason Mercer, and we'll give the full extent of that statement later. But the next stage must be then, what are you going to do about it? It's unlawful killing. Highways England are partly to blame. So what happens next?
Well, one of my lawyers has drafted a letter over the weekend for me to sign off, and we are sending that off to the Chief of South Yorkshire Police, and we are formally advising them that if they do not investigate Highways England for corporate manslaughter, I will be starting legal action. I'm also continuing to go through the IOPC and the Crime Commissioner's Office for the 4 complaints of corporate manslaughter that I have made against Highways England. Each one has been rejected, so each time I have gone through the IOPC and complained about that decision, and then I've done a lot of freedom of information requests asking for the documents on these decisions, and I get somewhere on some things and then absolutely stonewalled on others. But now I've got a growing legal team behind me, And we get a lot of people contacting us, and a lot of people in expert positions. We've got retired traffic sergeants contacting us, and he tells me how to write the letter, what acts to quote and what terms to quote to the Crime Commissioner's office. And then now, of course, I've got Dr. Alan Billings contacting me, who again has been saying that these were lethal for years. And, you know, he is the Crime Commissioner for South Yorkshire. And he's contacted me and said that he wants to arrange a meeting between me, him and Grant Shapps, which should be quite interesting. But it's the legal tools that I think are the biggest thing, the corporate manslaughter, because someone needs to be jailed. They need to accept that when they force through lethal designs because of budgets and backhanded contracts, that they will go to jail for it.
Claire Mercer, you're a credit to your whole family. God bless your efforts, and let's hope they come to fruition. Thanks for joining us on board the Sputnik. Well, that's what you call a campaigner. Now, as I said, we asked Highways England for a response to the criticisms of smart motorways we've made in this programme. This is what they said. We extend our deepest sympathies to the families of Alexandru Morganu and Jason Mercer. We recognise this continues to be an incredibly difficult time for them. Every road death is a tragic loss of life. We are determined to do all we can to make our roads as safe as possible and are already addressing many of the points raised by the coroner as published in the government's Smart Motorway Evidence Stocktake and Action Plan of March 2020. We will carefully consider any further comments raised by the coroner once we receive the report. Coming up after the break, biracial